Hey traders, Raghee here, and in today's video we're going to dive into one of the first setups that I look for when I am scanning for day trades during my prime 2 hours in the morning. And the V-score is a big part of that. So we had on the ES and on the YM, and this is also a big thing when it comes to directional bias. In other words, a lot of times the first trade that fires off in the morning is going to be the dominant psychology. And if we're favoring the lower end of the range, and I'm going to measure that by not just price but volume, if we're trading near the lower end of the range, then that is akin to actually being oversold. And oversold is typically a buy zone. So anytime we're near support, anytime we're near something that's oversold, I'm thinking buy. And again, this was the first thing we saw after the cash open. We have more proximity to that. So think about, what do we have proximity to on the open? What do we have proximity to on the open? Now, one of the reasons this works so well, think about the opposite side of this conversation. Why are gaps faded, especially gaps higher? Faded meaning, why do traders pile in to the short side of a gap higher? Well, in many ways, it feels like the most natural thing to do for the mind to say, well, the market's already done this big up thing, and surely what goes up must come down. And I wasn't engaged in the move higher, so I'm going to engage the exhaustion in the move lower, and that's really where the gap comes into play. And then more significantly, we tend to be at the upper end of the range. So think about this. It works both ways. So V-score lows, more proximity to the V-score lows gives us an opportunity to build a long position. And in this case, it was pretty early. Now, one of the things I'll talk about as well when I refer to my V-score is the range. What do I mean by that? So you kind of have this normal operating temperature. Today, that seems to be the high of the range. This was the low of the range. One of the reasons that I don't say, hey, go scan for -2 V-scores, why I think that's actually a waste of time, or go find all the positive +3 V-scores. The reason I don't do that is you really want to understand what was the V-score doing and where are we within the context of that. Here's my context, right? My low here and my high right there. So this is our low-high range. So now what's in context? It's not always going to be a whole number. That's the other misunderstanding about V-scores. It isn't just we always go from the mean to +1 or the mean to -1. We don't always move in these convenient whole number standard deviations. Right here, that V-score reading is a 2.3. This low V-score reading is a -2.14. That nuance matters big time. So again, don't always round to the whole number. Make sure you keep in mind what that nuance is. And then acknowledge where we are in terms of the operating range. And again, if we were testing the support, I want to be, if that's the first thing that we're doing, we're testing the support, that's where I want to be reacting. And if the first thing we're doing is somehow testing the upper end of the V-score, this resistance, then that's going to trigger more shorts. That's going to trigger a bearish bias. So that's a little bit of an insight into how this morning's Dow V-score buy triggered, and also the S&P, how that V-score triggered as well. Now the NASDAQ was a little bit different. We'll talk about the NASDAQ in the premium video, but you'll notice again, think about the operating temperature. Where are we operating from? What seems to be the high-low of the range? It's not a convenient whole number all the time, nor is it this fixed number where we're always looking for a number 3 or anything like that. Know where it is. Know what you have proximity to on the open, and that's your open right there. Know what you have proximity to on the open, and this really is sort of a first come, first serve. What is the first test? The resistance of the support, and that usually is where traders have sort of invested, both from a capital standpoint, directionally, and also mentally. Right? They've invested their psychology to the long side, and don't underestimate the power of recognizing that. And I'll see you in the next update.